Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Chop the Rock. I am Diana Long, Director of River Market Operations, and today our guest chef is Trey Reid, who is Assistant Chief of Communications for the Arkansas Game and Fish. We are gonna do some really fun, good wild game cooking today.
Absolutely. We are going to do some venison to start with. We're going to cook a dish, sort of a Jamaican-inspired dish of venison and an acorn squash in a Jamaican curry. And I mean, it is great for a cool fall or cool winter night. It's got a lot of spice and a lot of heat. We're going to have some habanero chilies in there. So great to maybe, go with a cold red stripe if you want to stick with the Jamaican theme or whatever.
There you go.
It's a really good recipe, Diana, for, if you've got an older deer and, that might need a little more TLC, if you will, something to kind of make the meat a little more tender. Some of these exotic flavors, some curry and some allspice and stuff really kind of, I don't want to cover up the wild game. That's why we hunt, is because we enjoy that.
Sure.
But some animals need to be tamed a little bit more, some wild game. So that's sort of the plan here.
I think that is a great plan, and we had kind of talked about this as we were getting ready to do this show, that traditionally in Jamaica, they either do chicken in jerk, which they do a lot,
right.
But goat is a very popular.
Goat or mutton would be a really popular way that you would, if you were in Jamaica, to find a curry dish. Of course, they put curry on fish and chicken and just about anything. Lots of seafood, obviously, with it being an island. But mutton or goat would be one of the more traditional. And so that's why I think the venison translates really well for that.
Right, and in my mind, that's why the older, saying this worked really well if you had a little bit of an older deer, not like a nice young doe, as we were talking. It doesn't mean necessarily that's been in your freezer forever.
Right, exactly.
Bad idea.
Exactly.
But if the deer you brought home or you have is not a super tender one, and that in my mind equates to the how long and the way that you would have to cook down goat to tenderize it, and mutton
absolutely
in the same kind of way. And so
a young deer, I like to just very simple preparation, especially like the loin or the back strap. Just put some salt and pepper, maybe some rosemary and thyme on it, a little olive oil, put it on the grill, cook it medium rare, and that's all you need to do.
Right.
But so this is a recipe that's going to be better to sort of, like I said, give a little TLC to that older deer that might not be as tender and as tasty as a young yearling doe or something like that.
Good deal. I am excited about this, and I know that we are in good hands, because this is just one of the many things that you do for Game and Fish.
Yeah.
You actually cook for, have some episodes on your own that y'all do?
Yeah, we have a television show called Arkansas Wildlife, and it airs on KARK in Central Arkansas, as well as Z42. You can check local listings for showtimes, as they say. But we do a lot of hunting and fishing episodes, probably a good mix of that, and also just the conservation work that we do at Game and Fish, behind the scenes, how our fisheries and wildlife biologists keep the natural state true to its name. But one thing we've been doing a lot more of lately is incorporating cooking, because I think a lot of people, we get really a lot of positive feedback about that. It kind of completes the circle. You go out, and whether you hunt ducks or deer or squirrels or rabbits or some other small game, or if you're a big angler and like to keep some of what you catch, that when people see the circle completed, it really kind of creates an appreciation. The other thing that we're learning is that with the locavore movement and with this push for folks to want organically sourced protein, it doesn't get any more organic and natural than wild game and fish. And we're blessed in Arkansas to have very diverse geography, from the mountains in the west and north down to the delta and coastal plain in the south and east. And so there's a little bit of something for everybody, and a lot of great opportunities out there. We're the duck capital of the world, and so just lots of ways to get that natural protein that you want. And so hopefully we can share some tips and tell folks how they might might convert that. You know, everybody likes fried deer steak and,
I was just going there, yeah.
take your duck and breast and cut it into strips and flour it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you know, that's what we like to do in the show, is kind of kick it up a notch and
Right.
show you. And some of the recipes can be a little more complicated, but they don't have to be. I mean, this recipe is, you know, just a handful of ingredients, really.
It's like a stew, really.
It is.
Once you get it all in the pot, it just goes.
You are exactly right. That's exactly what.
And so, you know, we're going to cook this on the stovetop today, but I bet you could put this in a crock pot and get the same effect and not even have to be in the kitchen that long.
The pressure cookers are coming back. And, you know,
one.
you got the Instant
Yes.
Pot. I bought one on Prime Day back in July, and I thought that this would be a perfect recipe for an Instant Pot or a pressure cooker, or like you said, a crock pot. I mean, just basically throw it all in there. Before you go to work in the morning, when you come home, the house is going to smell fabulous, and you're going to want to dig right in.
I think that's perfect. That is perfect. So let's get this show on the road.
All right.
am ready. What?
I guess why don't we start? The first thing we're going to do, we're going to take our venison, and I've got some pre-tenderized, just the way they came from the processor, and so they're already pretty tender. We're going to cut it up into chunks. So you want to work on that?
I am happy to work on that.
We'll just cut those into like a little 1-inch, 1 to 2 inch
Bite
chunks.
size.
Yeah, bite size.
Okay.
And so that meat's already slightly.
I have tenderized it. It looks almost like that minute steak you would get.
Exactly what it's like. That's exactly what that's like. And then when we get that ready, we're just going to kind of put a spice rub on it.
Gotcha.
That's going to let that, you know, infuse some flavors into the meat. And it's, you know, the first time I had this, it was I was just blown away by how tasty it was. It's got. We're going to use acorn squash today, but you can use any type of winter squash. You can use pumpkin. So it's really kind of, you know how you cook that pot of chili the first cold night in the fall. This is sort of that. I get that same sort of feeling with this.
Yeah,
It's like it really is great on a cool fall or winter night. So we're going to use about a pound of venison. This is slightly over a pound, but you can just double the recipe if you want to make more. If you got to feed, this will easily feed 4 to 6 people.
And I bet this is also good leftover. So if you're I mean, this is one of those kind of dishes, kind of like a roast or a chili, that are almost better the next day after they set overnight.
Those flavors really get in there.
Yeah, and so this would be something that you could cook for yourself or just for a couple of people and eat on it again, which if I'm going to go through the trouble of cooking at home, which is seldom, I would like very much to be able to take a break from that for a couple of days and enjoy what I've cooked a couple of times. So that means mostly in the wintertime.
It's a great, you know, my wife is always on my case about doing some meal prep on Sunday, Saturdays and Sundays, so it's not such a rush to get everything done during the week. And this would be a good dish to do that with, because it keeps really well. And like you said, those flavors infuse. I'm going to go ahead and get some of our veggies going here.
Okay. Do we need to blanch? Go ahead and start our.
Yes, we're going to do that. We're going to use some whole tomatoes. You can use canned tomatoes if you want, but just love the freshness, especially these heirloom tomatoes. So I've got some water going back here, and we're going to just let those sit in there for about 30 seconds or so.
Okay.
And we're going to blanch those because it makes it a lot easier to peel. Those don't take long at all. We don't want to cook the tomatoes. We just want to kind of blister the skin a little bit, and we're going to drop them in that ice
look,
bath.
It's already
over there.
coming off.
Yep.
So.
There we go. And there we go. I'm going to leave that water boiling because we're going to do the same thing with our acorn squash here.
Right.
If you ever tried to peel an acorn squash, it's not fun. It'll take a little bit.
It is quite a bit of, like, you need a hatchet to cut through.
Yeah, you do.
Or a really strong sous chef.
So I'm going to take this curry powder You're gonna use a couple tablespoons there. This is actually a Jamaican curry, which you can find in some international markets. So easy to get things off the internet nowadays too, you know, so you can, you probably won't find it at Kroger or Edwards Food Giant or something like that, but you can get things off the internet, and we've started to get some really nice international markets in Little Rock. That's coriander seed, ground coriander seed, and a little bit of allspice, about a teaspoon of each of the coriander and the allspice. Allspice, you mentioned you like the jerk chicken. That is allspice is the key ingredient in Jamaican jerk
Getting
seasoning.
that barbecue.
It's what gives it that flavor, and it, you know, you combine it with brown sugar and some other things, and it gets that nice crust glaze, on the outside of it.
But even as you were just sprinkling that on, it had a distinctive Jamaican curry smell to it. And I like curry. I've done the yellow curry. I have done green curry. I like to put a little green curry in like a chicken salad, like a.
Oh yeah.
It just adds another layer of flavor. But that was distinctly Jamaican. But let's say, because curry is not necessarily for everybody.
Some people are not big fans.
Yeah. Like I have the thing where if I have too much cilantro, it tastes like soap.
Yes.
You know, so some people kind of, you know, have that. So if you were really interested in this recipe, but you're just not a fan of curry, it'd be really easy to take and substitute out the spices and the ginger, leave everything else in there, and maybe do some chili powder, some cumin.
That's a great point. You basically make it a southwestern Mexican type flavor, almost like a chili, but maybe almost like a deconstructed chili. Use you know, some cumin. This has got garlic in it, so you probably want to leave that.
Sure.
If you want to tame the heat, instead of using these habaneros, use a jalapeno.
Right.
Kind of not, habaneros are 100,000 plus on the Scoville scale, and jalapenos are about 5 to 10. So it's you know, much milder chili there. You know, add some cumin, some paprika, or just, you know, if you like a particular other type of cuisine or a spice sort of blend, try that. And like you said to start with, we're essentially just making a stew, and you can tailor the flavors to what you like. I really like this Jamaican curry, though. It just kind of puts me in an island frame of mind. And who doesn't like an island frame of mind?
I don't know. I don't know why anybody wouldn't, but you know, we just also want people to. Don't be afraid to experiment. You know, it's harder to experiment with baking because it is so chemically scientific with how things do.
Absolutely.
But, you know, in cooking, experiment. Have fun with it.
I read a great article the other day talking about how learn which flavors kind of complement one another, and sort of, you know, try different things with those, and have some staple spices and other things in your kitchen that you can kind of your go-tos. I'm a big fan of both Caribbean and Mexican cuisine. So a lot of my things are kind of, you know, that area around the Gulf of Mexico. That's my wheelhouse. That's where I like to go. But you know, you might like Asian cuisine, or you know, Eastern European, or whatever, Italian, Mediterranean. You just kind of find that spot you like and work in there, and then start to branch out to try different things.
That's a great idea. Okay, so this needs to be refrigerated.
We're going to refrigerate that for at least an hour.
Okay.
So you don't be afraid to leave it in there 3 or 4 hours. Basically, we're just infusing the meat with those really exotic flavors from that curry and allspice.
The longer it sits, the more that's going to get in there really good too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. So while that's sort of infusing with flavor, we're going to work on our vegetables here. We're going to dice some onions and the tomatoes, and
so see, just blanching just for that 30 seconds or so. I mean, you don't even really need a knife to peel the skin. The skin already
so nice?
Just peels right away.
I'm going to check my acorn squash back here, and that should make that much
I'm excited to
easier
see if that works.
Yeah, we're trying something new.
Again, don't be afraid to experiment a little bit in your kitchen.
And you can dice these. They don't have to be a really fine dice. I find that if you, not coarse or roughly chop, but they kind of blend in and impart more flavor when you do that. So Diana, what type of, do you have like a cuisine that you're really into, that you like to work in that on a certain palate, if you will?
You could pretty much put garlic salt on anything and I would eat it. I really like a lot of garlic. I am a soul food junkie.
Okay.
So it's that food I grew up on, small town Arkansas. You know, that's all, my grandparents only knew how to cook that way.
Sure.
And so try to find ways to make that a little bit healthier.
I'm going to tell you, it has nothing to do with this recipe, but I have a friend who he smoke dries a lot of peppers. Everybody's heard of chipotle, which is essentially a smoked and dried jalapeno, but you can get lots of other peppers, milder ones, you know, sweet peppers even, Italian marconis. Add that to a pot of greens and with a little bit of, you know, maybe olive oil or other vegetable oil, and you will swear that there's meat in there.
Yeah.
That smoky flavor just makes you think, oh, what? It tricks your
That's
tongue.
a great vegetarian option to a ham hock.
Absolutely. Well, you know, when you started talking soul food, that was my first thought, was how you gotta put a ham hock or some bacon or some sort of pork fat in most of our southern cooking. But you don't have to. You can if you want to eat a little bit healthier.
Ways. I don't eat a lot of soul food just because it tastes better when it's not healthy cooked. But I tell you, being here in the River Market, in the market hall every day, it smells like bacon in the mornings here. And oh man, it's hard. So I'm chopping these pretty small here. Is that okay?
That's fine. Okay. However, it doesn't have to be a super fine chop. Again, you know, those tomatoes, especially those Cherokee purples, they're so juicy that when you put them in the pot, it's going to become tomato sauce essentially.
That's right. I really like that, like at our farmers market that we have here, it seems like in the last 10 years or so, there's this huge variety of tomatoes that I guess growing up, you just had tomatoes.
Yeah, we had the Bradley County pinks, and that's about it. I grew up in Pine Bluff, so that, you know, it was just down the road to Warren where they have the Pink Tomato Festival every year. And I never cared for tomatoes when I was younger. And I tried them again when I was in my 30s. And I think the key was I had one of these really good, fresh, vine-ripened tomatoes as opposed to the red styrofoam that we often get in the grocery store. Much to my surprise, I became a tomato fan. And now, like you said, I really get a kick out of the variety of tomatoes that are available at the farmers market. I'm a big visitor to the farmers market. I'm there many Saturday mornings.
You know, I had that exact same experience with tomatoes growing up, and we'll only eat them if they come from a friend's garden or from our farmers market here.
That's pretty much the way I am too. It's funny how our tastes change over the years.
It is, and I'm glad it did because I was really missing out. And I got made a lot of fun of by my family for not eating the tomatoes, but they have to be fresh. Store-bought does not work for me.
Just not the same thing, is it?
So we've got lots of stuff that we're going to continue chopping up here. And so while we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of the stuff that y'all have got going on at Game and Fish?
Oh, we've got so much stuff going on at Game and Fish. Of course, you know, Game and Fish has been around for over 100 years, but in its current manifestation since the 1940s, when Amendment 35 passed, it created essentially the modern Game and Fish Commission, and it essentially charges us with conserving the fish and wildlife resources of the state. And that's not just the animals we hunt and fish for, but non-game animals as well. Everything from monarch butterflies that are making their way from Canada to Mexico each fall to black bears. We brought black bears back in Arkansas. So, and most folks probably know about those things that we do, that managing the habitats and managing the species themselves. But
keeping an eye on their health too. I mean, y'all are out there looking at health issues and diseases,
absolutely,
and food sources, and maybe even what ever expanding populations are doing to the habitats.
Exactly. Feral hogs have been on our landscape for a long time, but their populations have really blown up over the past several years, probably last 10, 20 years, and they're creating a lot of habitat degradation, and so we're trying to trap hogs on our properties and work with private landowners to trap hogs on private lands to try to get rid of some of those issues. But really the key to wildlife management is habitat, whether we're talking fisheries or we're talking woods or fields or whatever. Most critters are products of the soil that they walk around on, or in the case of fish, the soil that's on the bottom of the lake. We do a lot of large-scale habitat projects on our lakes. We've done over the last few years. We have aging lakes in Arkansas, so we're trying to add some habitat structures, either natural, like in the form of trees, or removing invasive cedars from, like, say, Corps of Engineer parks and dropping those in, like hundreds and hundreds, and they all creates fish habitat, but it also creates a great fishing spot for anglers, because little fish concentrate around that, and that draws in the big fish like walleye and bass and crappie that our anglers see. But one of the great things, downtown here, just steps from the river market, is our Central Arkansas Nature Center. And you can learn so much about what the Game and Fish does there. We've also got nature centers in Pine Bluff, Jonesboro, and Fort Smith. We're getting ready to build a nature and education center in Northwest Arkansas as well. But those are great places to kind of, if you want to get involved in the outdoors, if you want to learn how to, source your own native, organic, natural protein like venison or whatever, we can teach you how. And we're really eager to teach you how. We've got great folks. I know you've had Holly Berdeja or Holly Sanders from our Nature Center on the show before. I think she did some Dutch oven cooking.
She did, and it was so good.
Holly and the rest of the staff down there are so good at, we like to, that's a place that we can connect people with nature. And even if you have no idea, you've never done it before, this is a good place. It's kind of a springboard into whatever activity. And it's not just consumptive activities like hunting and fishing, but if you want to learn how to paddle a kayak or a canoe, good places to go hiking, places to go see birds, whatever. We really just want people to get outside and enjoy nature.
Right. They even have, like, the Master Gardeners even has beautiful landscaping around, and it's all native species of plants, and they're all very well labeled. And so, like, if you're looking for something that you might think, let's say you're doing some landscaping, it is time to get that out, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to get that out. I continue on. I was just going to, forgot that we had that in there. Hopefully it's not cooked too much.
Luckily, it's a tough squash. No, it's not.
Real tough squash.
So, anyway, so they can teach you about those kinds of things, like what the plant species are. So all kinds of questions that you might have about,
You can learn so much there. And, we're unfortunately losing participation in hunting and fishing nationally, and to a lesser degree here in Arkansas. And I don't want it to sound, it's not necessarily just a funding issue, because the sale of hunting and fishing licenses does fund conservation.
Sure.
And as I mentioned, not just for deer and ducks and those things that we think about, but also for non-game animals. But more importantly, if we continue to lose participation, and even in some of bird watching and kayaking and canoeing, we're going to kind of lose our connection to that, and future generations won't have that strong connection to the natural world. And then everybody's going to lose. So it's more about creating an ethic of environmental stewardship, conservation stewardship, as we move forward. You know, we're very urban. The society's become urban. Technology is everywhere you look. But you know, I think, and I think it's, you know, most of your folks at Game and Fish are going to say the same thing, that connection to nature is really important. I mean, we used to live in caves and survived in nature, you know, our species, and so we want to kind of maintain that connection and maintain the natural state in its best state into the future. So,
if you would like to introduce your kids to something and learn about it yourself, and you don't know these things, the Nature Center, as well as the other resources they all have, is a great way to get started on all of that.
And we find that more and more what you're talking about. It's like a lot of times it's the kids that want to get involved, but the parents, you know, we may have skipped a generation and they don't know how to get started.
Right.
So that's why our Nature Centers exist. And so we've got a lot of resources out there, but I would highly recommend visiting a nature center as a place to get started.
Absolutely. It's a very popular attraction down here.
It's great. You want to get up? Let's
Yes.
We'll start trying to, we may have to divide and conquer on this squash. We'll see how our process worked out.
I'm going to let you use the big knife to get it going.
That's a good idea. So we're going to
notice how I stood back too.
Yeah, stand back. We're going to just,
that's not terrible.
not bad. Slice it. That stem is what's getting in our way there. We're just going to break that the rest of the way. We're just going to cut that dude out where he's out of the way. So
I'll
first
get
of all,
us a spoon.
We'll scoop. Yeah, we'll scoop that out. It's going to peel a little better, I think. Still going to have to
It'll be all right.
scoop those out. We'll cut it into long slices, kind of like you would a cantaloupe. And that's how we're gonna tackle this. But it's gonna come off a lot easier, I think.
So my favorite of these hard squashes like this, acorn squash is delicious, but I cheat. I buy the pre-cubed up kind of stuff.
Well, I don't blame you.
But I like to do spaghetti squash.
Yes.
Partly because you can poke holes in it and nuke it in the microwave, and then you don't have to deal.
I'll give you those.
Perfect,
Trey,
thank
and I'll let
you.
use that
Such
small
a
knife
gentleman, thank
to
you.
kind of cut those edges off.
Got it.
Cut the rind. I'm a big fan of summer squash, the yellow and zucchini, but this is really good too.
It is, and you can't really put a zucchini or a yellow squash in a stew-like
It just
environment.
falls. It just falls apart.
You'd end up with a creamy squash there, and so this actually will keep its texture and hold up a lot better.
That's right.
In that kind, and they have a really good flavor. It is a little bit more work, but it's totally worth it.
This is a little bit easier than
It's definitely easier than raw.
Than raw.
Ooh, they're a little slippery though. That's the thing.
Did we trade one problem for another?
No.
You know, another thing I always like to remind folks, when you're doing something like this, when you're using vegetables and you're not using all the pieces, you know, like these rinds, you can make a wonderful vegetable stock with
That's
this.
right.
And that way nothing goes to waste. Save it, put it in the freezer, and the next time you want to make a soup, you've got your base ready to go there. I hope we're not making too much work for you, Diana.
I've got it now. I just had to get a rhythm going.
Yeah, the ribs on this squash make it a little harder to get around too. The good news is, this is basically, we're going to start building our stew, our venison and acorn squash curry, as soon as we're finished here. That venison's been soaking up those good spices. All right.
You are just super swift.
I think what happened was that I didn't rotate our squash in the
So we
in
got
our
an easy
parboiling
side.
pot back there. And we got an easy side and a hard side. And, you know, I promise you it wasn't intentional that you got the hard side there.
It's okay.
Yeah, we'll just dice that up, and you can be a pretty large dice
Rough
there.
dice there.
We don't need It doesn't have to be pretty. This is all going, like, again, into a stew.
So this is kind of taking place of your potatoes that you would probably put in a stew, but way more nutritious.
Way more nutritious. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, some of those starches are going to help sort of thicken it up and make it more of a stew than a soup. All right.
Perfect.
We about got it. So take a little break, and then we'll pull the venison out. And
Sounds good.
start
Dump,
putting it
dump, dump,
together.
and go.
Yep.
I like it. We'll be right back.
Ranked among the nation's best value cities for travel and its most travel-worthy state capitals, Little Rock is known for its southern charm and hospitality. Request a vacation planning kit at littlerock.com and see why we say getaways are better with a southern accent.
Welcome back. We have gotten our marinated venison out of the fridge, and you can, I don't know if you can really see how that's just soaked in.
I was gonna tell you, I mean, you can tell how it soaked up those spices. Yeah.
And we've got our little bit of vegetable oil.
Yeah, I've got a couple tablespoons of vegetable oil in there and medium-high heat, and just gonna put the venison in there, I guess. Now, are you ready?
Let's go.
You want to do the honors?
There you go. I'm good at this part.
Here, I got us one.
You
got us
too.
one.
Look at you already.
Ready to go there. Oh, sizzle, sizzle. So we're gonna just let that kind of keep it moving, but we really just want to get it browned on all sides. Again, this is gonna cook for at least 2 hours. So, you know, it doesn't have to be completely cooked. We just want to get a nice kind of crust on the outside, and then we're going to add some of our other stuff. So it generally takes, 4 or 5 minutes to get it brown the way you want it to. And
and I also think it's interesting that venison is a very lean meat,
Very lean.
and which is probably one of my favorite things about it is that it is so lean. And when you cook a chili and you're using venison, you don't have to put it in the fridge and scrape the fat off the top. You know how you have to do if you're trying to be healthy. And so you did, even though it's a non-stick skillet, you still need to put a little bit of that vegetable oil
in there.
It's not fatty enough to produce like a hamburger meat would.
No, not going to do that really at all. One of the keys to cooking venison, and really any wild game, I hear this with duck a lot, like, duck's no good to eat. Well, the problem is that most people are overcooking it.
Right.
I tell folks with pretty much any game, you really don't want to go past medium. Venison, it's either a low and slow like this, like we're doing, a stew or a chili that's going to really kind of let it tenderize in some sort of liquid.
Right.
Or a high heat where you're searing, like you would cook a steak. I mentioned the venison backstrap or loin earlier. I'll just, I want that to be nice and red in the middle, coming out to pink, and then just a nice, kind of browning on the outside. So I think that's looking good. We've got a really powerful stove. So I think the next thing we'll do will be to add our onion and tomato. And I've got my nifty little scraper here.
And that comes in really handy.
Yeah, you can use them for like dividing pastry, and if you're making pie crust and things like that. But it's also a really good way to scoop things up, and you don't dull your knives that way. So we're basically, you talked earlier about using different spices in there. So we're, it's almost like making chili. We're making a tomato sauce, basically. A tomato-based sauce here. But man, those sweet heirloom tomatoes, they're going to be so good. We're also going to add a little bit of tomato paste to it, about a tablespoon of tomato paste. And we'll throw that in there. This is some I had left over. I hate to, so many recipes call for 1 or 2 tablespoons, and even the little cans of tomato paste.
I don't know how you could ever use.
You can't use all of it.
Right, like you'd have
You were
to
telling me
cook
you
for
got a
an
neat
army.
trick. Like you put it in the freezer.
You can. That happens to be one of those freezer-proof little Ziploc deals there that you've
Yep.
got. But you could also just use a bag, and you can actually freeze that.
All right, so I think we can probably add our. If you'll hand me that.
You'll need this, but then I'm going to show you another trick.
You got a
I will
trick?
stir.
Okay.
I have a trick too.
We're gonna throw our garlic in there, and here, let's go ahead and hit that habanero. Man, I really love habaneros. Are hot, and it's not just about adding heat though. They have this really great citrus flavor to them. A jalapeno to me is a lot more like a bell pepper with some heat to it.
Some heat.
But the habanero, which is really popular in Caribbean and Mexican, throughout Latin American cooking, it imparts also a really kind of almost like an orangey, lemony sweetness to it. So that's why I like.
That
I'm
is
a
going to go
big
really
fan.
well with that curry. So, I talk about these all the time.
I don't
on
have
this
any of
show,
those, yeah.
and I ended up buying some at home. I got them here because for convenient storage. And granted, they come color coded, and blue is for fish, and yellow is for chicken, and red is for beef. And then green is for vegetables.
Okay.
And I don't always follow that because sometimes I just grab one. But to keep any kind of cross-contamination going, and they're super easy to store. They wash in a dishwasher, but then you just fold them up.
Look at that.
And so, you're going to use it anyway, so it can easily take the place of your scoop.
That is going to be.
Once you have that incorporated in, I'm going to take it over here and try to show without steaming up our mirror.
Yeah, show that, and we're going to add a little chicken broth to it. We'll do that while we're over here.
All right, so I'm going to hold this back, and maybe we won't steam it, but look how thick and rich, and it's got that. It smells so good
It
too.
does. It just does. It's and,
That's
it's,
hearty.
It is hearty. That
Yeah.
is a really good way to put it.
That's going to fill you up.
Recipe calls for about 3/4 of a cup, but basically you just want enough liquid to cover it. So because you're going to lose a little bit during the cooking process, even though we're going to cook it with the cover. But that's really about all there is to it. We got a good simmer going there, and then we're going to turn that down to a little bit lower.
Here we go.
And
simmer for a couple hours, just like you would cook a chili or a steak.
exactly. Check on it. It's fine. It's not like rice. You can take the lid off of it, and check it
Stir
out,
it.
stir it, make sure that you don't have some pieces of that squash or venison that are up top and not getting that moisture to
Getting that
tenderize
even.
them the way we want. And that's a couple hours. When we take it off, we're going to add a little bit of cilantro and some salt and pepper. We'll be
Heat it
ready
up.
to go.
Well, I cannot wait. So we're going to take a break and kind of get this all cleaned up, and then we'll taste our finished product.
That's the part I like the best.
That's what we do this for right there. All right, we'll be back. Thanks.
Named one of 5 secret foodie cities by Forbes Travel Guide, Little Rock has a thriving artisanal food scene, great restaurants, and a growing number of craft breweries. Request a vacation planning kit at littlerock.com and see why we say dining is better with a Southern accent.
All right, we are back, and it's been a long wait for that to cook because it smells so delicious in here that I cannot wait
There
to
are
try
some
it.
really nice smells wafting through the room right now.
Yeah, I can imagine coming home on a cool, dreary, maybe a little bit rainy fall day like we have so many of into the house after the day, and that's what you come home to.
Like I said, it's like that, first pot of chili on a cold night. This is that type of hearty and very flavorful and some exotic flavors that really, you know, just kind of warms you up from the inside out. The good news is the wait's over.
The wait
we're
is over.
Ready. I'm going to chop a little cilantro.
I'll pull
if you
this
want
off.
to get the rice, this is really great over rice. You don't have to have rice. You can just put it in a bowl and eat it like a stew. But I like that rice to kind of soak up some of those flavors, and you know, Stuttgart is the rice capital of the world. We
That's
produce
right.
over half the country's rice, so we've got to support our rice farmers.
We do, and that happens to be, we talked a little bit about, you know, growing up local, and that is, I'm from there. Woo, that's going to steam us up. Grew up in Stuttgart and Hazen. Actually, why don't we do
You know,
this?
one of the first rice crops ever grown in Arkansas was grown in Hazen in 1904.
Not surprised. Okay, so
Wanna
this
do the-
looks fantastic.
Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. All right. You want to fix this up? Just
I
a little
will.
rice in the bottom. I'll grab some of this after you.
Rice got good and sticky there.
Yeah, we hadn't fluffed it up yet.
That's okay. There we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
And you really don't even need much rice to make a good base because this is so thick.
Absolutely. All right. Make sure we get plenty of our squash and our chunks of venison and lots of that good juice. A couple more pieces of venison in there. You don't want anybody to get shortchanged. And then we'll just put a little bit of cilantro. Of course, it makes it look pretty, but it's also, you know, that cilantro brightens up the dish a little bit because these are some really, really hearty flavors.
They really are. And cilantro smells good. It smells so. I wish for me it tasted like it
you
smelled.
wish you liked it as much as it tasted as well as it
Okay,
smelled.
so
All right, here we go. Do the
dig
honors.
in.
Yeah.
Dig in. I'm gonna
Make sure you get a little bit of everything.
I'm gonna get a little bit.
Get
I'm
around the
picking
cilantro.
Around the cilantro, just
That's
a little
right.
tad
I'll
of it.
take your
will
share
work.
of cilantro.
That's fair trade.
Pretty hot. Oh man, it
Oh
smells
wow,
so
that's
good.
very hot. I was gonna take a bite.
We're gonna wait a minute then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, but I got some of that flavor.
And while you're waiting, I want to tell you about one more really cool program we're doing at Game and
Perfect.
Fish this fall. An inaugural project for us. First time we've done it. We're going to do a mentored hunt program. You know, I mentioned earlier that we're losing participation in hunting and fishing. It's really hard for us as an agency to just, you know, I can only take a couple of people hunting.
It's not safe after that.
Right. We've had some really cool programs. We worked with you here at the River Market in the past, basically with a field to table type program where we took foodies and basically through their gut lured them into hunting. You know, we take 10 or 12 people in a program like that. So we've got a really cool program, our Mentored Hunt program, where we're going to have like a representative in all 75 Arkansas counties. Then they'll be responsible for like recruiting more volunteers. And then all those volunteers will be able to take people hunting. So we're hoping to really get that going, cranking this fall. You know, if you want to know more about that or any other Game and Fish project, agfc.com is our website. And you can learn about all the things we talked about here today and lots more.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Great
a great
educational
website.
resource.
Yes, it is. I'm glad you got to throw that in.
Well, maybe I talked long enough for this to cool off now.
Well, I'm just going to burn my mouth. If not, I can't wait any longer.
Oh boy. Ma'am. What do you think? You like Jamaican. You like curry.
I like all of those things.
Man, those are some really wonderful flavors.
Oh
yeah.
my goodness, they really are. I mean, it's a heat,
I'm staying on this side. I
but a
double dipped.
sweet. The cilantro kills the germs. It's okay.
Of course.
It's soapy. That is so good.
Is that venison not super tender?
It is. It is so tender. And no really wildish taste to it that
Not
I
at
think
all.
some people are scared of when they. All it takes is for one person to cook it terrible, and they're like, mm-mm.
I'm never eating it again, you know?
Right, yeah. And so you just have to keep a open mind and follow the right procedures there. But
I love that you noticed that squash, obviously, and our tomato are imparting that sweetness, and then our spices and our chili. So you got a mix of sweet and savory there.
Oh,
And that's
super
really
balanced.
typical of Jamaican and a lot of Caribbean cooking. And it's one of the things that I love so much about that style of cuisine is that, you know, that blend where one doesn't overpower the other, but you still get a little bit of both. It's so good.
Yeah, it really is. And it's spicy, but it's a spicy that is a warm you up kind of. My mouth isn't on fire.
No,
I can
no,
still
absolutely.
taste.
But if you like that, add another habanero to it.
Absolutely.
If you want it a little spicier.
Sure,
but,
sure. That's another way that you could experiment. But I really like that the pieces of squash also, and the tomatoes cook down so far that you can't even see them.
No, again, it's
They just
basically a
become.
sauce.
That's right. If you were really trying to no carbs and you didn't want to do the rice, you could eat this without the rice, and it would be absolutely fine. It's plenty hearty.
It would be just fine.
I'm gonna cook that at home for sure. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode of Chop the Rock, and we encourage you to keep watching additional episodes on this station and on our YouTube page. See you next time.